Ashish, how are you
Yeah.
doing?
Doing well. Can you guys hear me? Are we good?
Are we good? Yeah.
Are we good? Hey, thanks for making it on a Saturday. I just can't believe it that there are so many people around. So, yeah, it was a working day for me. So, very convenient to just come from the office, which is about 3 kilometers away, 3 maybe 4 kilometers away. Yeah. Thanks for coming in. All yours.
Great. So Ashish, when I do these conversations, am I clear, guys? Yeah. Great. So when I do these conversations, right, I try to figure out that who is this person, right? And I found that the best way to know a person is to try to find out their secrets.
Right.
Right? So, in preparation for this conversation, I focused myself. I got to the office. I opened my laptop, and like any millennial, I asked ChatGPT,
Uh,
"Tell me
okay.
some of Ashish Mohapatra's secrets."
Okay.
What do you think ChatGPT said to me?
There are no secrets.
All right, can we see what ChatGPT actually said? ChatGPT said, "I'm sorry, I cannot tell you Ashish's secrets. He's a respected entrepreneur and a public figure, and I do not want to invade his privacy." So clearly, somebody's teaching ChatGPT ethics. Are you impressed by that?
Yeah, very much.
All right. So I had to reframe my question, and I reframed my question to, okay, can you tell me some of his lesser known traits which made him successful? Okay. And go back. It gave me three of your traits. I want to ask you, what do you think the first one is?
Um, Lesser known traits. I think I have a good memory. Maybe, yeah, good memory. Second is, I think I can smell money. I, I'm being honest. Um, I think I'm a good sales guy.
Okay. Let's see.
Okay,
Let's see what ChatGPT said. The first
but
one.
how would ChatGPT know that?
It says that you're a lifelong learner and you who constantly updates his skills, and you've studied over books of over 1,000 companies, and you read a lot. So that's true, right?
I used to
Fair enough.
till I started up. Yeah,
Okay. What's the second one you said?
I said a sales guy.
Okay. Second one. Let's see. It says that you're resilient and persistent in the face of rejections, and got 73 rejections from investors in 6 months. Firstly, is that true?
Well, to be very honest with you, the first time a question was posed to me, I said something like 50-ish. So the guy who was writing it down didn't want to write 50-ish. It didn't sound right. So he said 55. But the next guy who saw 55, he said 55 sounds like a soap bar, right? So it became 60. Okay. And the next time I was asked, is it 60-ish? I already knew there was 60 in there, right? So I think it's more than 50. So yeah, it just kind of got extended. So this 70 plus, I think, it has the number 7 in it. So
Okay,
yeah,
that's close enough, right?
yeah, yeah.
All right. What's the third one? You said sales guy.
Sales guy, I think I said a good memory.
Okay. Maybe this one we know why you couldn't say this, because you are humble. So ChatGPT says that you're very humble. You have an egalitarian leadership style. But what actually definitely believe that. The part I have a harder time believing is you don't have a fixed seat in the office. You don't have a parking space. You travel economy, and you share hotel rooms.
Uh, I don't have a secretary. I've never had a secretary, even when I had the option of having one while I was working in a corporate. Uh, don't have a driver at home. So,
Why is
like I
that?
drove myself.
Why is that though?
I just think that, it just keeps you very grounded. Frankly, a lot of these comforts actually push you away from building things which are more necessities. So, if you are into using a lot of those necessities, you will probably build more necessary products and services. That's how I think.
No, fair enough. But what about, let's say, opportunity cost of time? So if you're spending time
I
driving,
just extend hours. Like you can't figure it out. I didn't sleep last night.
oh, really?
I can really extend hours.
See, now if you feel a little bit zonky, now people know why. All right,
Yeah.
we'll go to the. So those are all the questions that we had from ChatGPT, right? But we'll begin with getting to know a little bit more about you, right? You've been somebody who's always set very audacious goals for yourself,
Right.
right? And
Like the 100 million pat, I actually set it 2 years back.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that when at the time that you set a goal like that, it would seem like a moonshot, right? कि चांद पे जाना है.
Huh.
So, but I think now there's enough data for the public to see that you're not just somebody who says कि चांद पे जाना है, but you're actually like the Apollo missions. You're actually able to break it down into smaller missions.
Right.
Right. I want to know a little bit about your background, your humble origins that actually build this mindset that I know I have to achieve big, but I also understand I need to break it down into small parts.
See, frankly, I actually spent my very early years in IIT Kharagpur. Both my parents were academics. My mother was a professor in physics, and my father was a agriculture scientist. And they were both doing their PhD, so I was in Kharagpur. And what happened is, this is like mid 80s, okay? Um, so when I was in Kharagpur, the kind of stuff that they used to talk about while at Kharagpur used to be like really, really big. Kharagpur then had a bilateral relationship with Russia. So Russia then obviously was one of the biggest superpowers right in the middle of the Cold War. I mean, towards the fag end of the Cold War, used to really fund Kharagpur. So they used to talk about really, really big things, right? And through that, I think I got exposed to different kinds of things that a normal kid won't. Because frankly, what used to happen is my parents used to go to study or do their research and stuff like that, and they used to leave me in either a library or with somebody, and I used to hear people talk. And as a small kid, I got enthused by it. But then suddenly, what happened is after that, we went back to my small town, which is Cuttack, because my father went back to his institute, my mother went back to teaching, and suddenly Cuttack was very different from Kharagpur. I wanted that Kharagpur, and then it was a really fledgling institute, to be rebuilt around me in Cuttack, but it just wasn't possible. And then somebody told me that, you know what, you can actually rebuild it by taking baby steps. So that's how it started. Thinking about saying, okay, how do I, get that kind of knowledge? So I started going to a library next door. There I started picking up stuff and stuff like that. It was always baby steps, one by one by one. And once I completed the first step, I realized that the second step is a lot more easier and stuff like that. So nothing by design, but that's where I come from. But the
Right.
story didn't end there. I mean, I think this is when I was like 10, 11 or so. So what happened after that is, I used to go to a very simple kind of a school because it was closer home. And then I realized that one of my friends used to actually, we used to take tiffins from home. And one of my friends actually used to get these huge tiffin boxes delivered to him over lunch. Okay, huge tiffin boxes. And there used to be two people carrying that and all that. And they had really tasty food, right? And I used to always go and share with him. He was generous enough. Then I went and told my mom, why don't you do this for me? He said, "Do log bade log hain." Then I got fascinated with the fact as to what is this bloody bade log thing, because I really wanted those tiffin boxes delivered. So I went and broke it down. Okay, and this I'm probably around 11ish. Okay, 11, 12, whatever. So I broke it down into saying that if you have to be a bade log, then there has to be these 7, 8 things in life. Okay?
Okay.
And the foremost amongst them, that was money. That you really need to have money. Second was you need to be interesting. Third is you need to have a active hobby and stuff like that, right? So at some point in time, I used to have more than 12 hobbies. Actually, at the peak, I had 15. Stamp collection, coin collection, postcard collection, sketching, all that stuff. Just to become a bade log, so that those tiffin carriers used to can get delivered. And it didn't stop there, by the way. So the first thing was obviously to make money, right? So during those days, and I'm talking about now 93, 94, chit funds or micro investments were actually legal, right? And they were looking for good sales guys. I realized that if you could actually sell these micro investments to retail investors, like I would say a SEC class lower than the people sitting out here, you could really make a ton of money. So that's how I got introduced to business. I became a sales guy when I was in class 8, 9, gravitating from 8 to 9. And
Right.
so, yeah, so those are my origins, yes.
I was actually going to get into the topic of money a little bit later in this conversation, but now that you brought it up, I have a very pointed question.
Right.
And only somebody who's been in this position of, not coming from humble means and then having quite a lot of it can actually answer this. Does money buy happiness?
No, money buys more money, which in turn will buy more money. It's a never ending cycle. Once you've got into that, it's so intoxicating. Like
Right.
like I was telling you that 2 years back, our goal was 100 million.
Right.
Now the goal has moved to 300 million of bat. I mean, it takes some doing to do it at that scale, but it just, it's a never-ending race.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
money buys nothing else.
there's a Jim Carrey, the actor. He had actually said this once that I wish everybody could get rich and famous and have everything they ever wanted, so that they would know that that's not the answer.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so it's a
But
it's
once
something.
you will never realize that. See, when you're telling me this, okay, it sounds true to me. But when I want to practice it, it just won't happen because I'm in that,
You're in the race
in the
already.
race. Yeah.
Uh, just related to that, while we're on this topic of money, did you find any of your relationships changing after you became successful or after you had money?
No, I think what changed is because you are in the pursuit of money making. To be very honest, what happens is you kind of give away old relationships much faster because you are always so forward looking. आप इतना future देख रहे हैं कि पिछला जो भी छूट गया आगे दौड़ पीछे छोड़. That it always happens like that. I think I have I have great friends right now, but I'm pretty sure that if I move on to a new place in another 3 years or so, all these guys would be dumped and they would dump me as well, right? So it's vice
Great.
versa. So I think that has happened because you are always looking ahead
Okay.
in life.
I'll just follow up on that, right? So let's say you've been in bigger institutions where I'm sure you made friends all over, right? Whether
Right.
that was at that IIT or at
I have a
McKinsey.
friend sitting out here. I mean,
Oh,
he went to B school with me, Vivek.
I think we should ask him, right, whether you've changed or not. But I'll do that at another
He
time.
wouldn't know what I'm talking about right now. I'm a very different personality than what he would know
Oh, really?
about me at campus. Because then I was just a nerd. I just wanted to ace exams. Is that
Oh,
right? Yeah.
that's
So
true. Is that true? Did you get his notes before
I
exams?
used to be a good teacher. I mean, it was a 1 year MBA, ISB.
Right. Did you share notes? Were you that guy?
Yeah, I used to share notes, but more than that, see, I used to be this union. I had a bit of a union leadership background, so I actually used to take evening classes
Right.
for people who could get me good stuff to eat and some gifts, and then I used to teach them.
There's always a transaction involved,
Yeah,
right?
there's always transaction involved. Yeah, yeah, nothing's for free.
My last question on this topic of money, right? You are technically now a billionaire, right? Have you kind of reconciled with that tag? How does the
Life
kid from
doesn't
Kitty,
change.
sorry?
Life doesn't change. Yeah, technically I am, but frankly, it doesn't matter to you. I mean, because the treadmill just, gets faster
Right.
and the incline just gets harder,
Right.
and you just have to run a lot more.
Fair enough. I'm going to change tracks from talking about the outcome, which is Ashish Mohapatra, to the process that was Mr. Ashish Mohapatra. You've been known to conduct a lot of these little experiments,
Yeah.
even at work, right?
Yeah.
And you double down on what's working, and then you shut down very quickly what doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to hear about the experiment which led to Off Business and Oxyzo.
See, very frankly, what was happening is that around, I would say, late 2014, I actually started seeing a lot of activity around the B2B world. Particularly, companies were getting started in financing, in commerce, in logistics, around the SME world, right? Hitherto a neglected world because mostly stuff used to exist for either corporates or for retail. And then what happened is I said, okay, this is the space that I come from because I've traded between a few as a kid. I used to sell some physical coal and stuff like that when I made good money from selling those micro investments. So I had traded between a few as a kid. I had run one. I had run a SME in one of my corporate stints because that was one of the roles that was given to me. I had invested in few as a venture capitalist. I said, okay, this is the world that I come from. If I look at the guys who are coming and presenting to us as prospective investees, I used to think that these guys are chumps. Like they hardly know it. They can't even talk the language because if you're a SME guy or you're a guy on the street and you're talking in Hindi, you have to talk taka, bata, rupiah, okay, rin, nivesh. So they used to not even talk the language, and I used to think, what chums, yeah. This is what I mean. They don't know the world that they come from. So I actually jumped without an idea. I said, okay, I will do something for the SMEs. I don't know what, but I had made my money, right? And I had made a decent amount of, I would say, asset base which could have taken care of, like, let's say, a couple of decades. So I just jumped, and then I figured it out. the way I figured it out is I said, okay, let me break the problem into saying, what do I need? So in my mind, I needed 3 or 4 things. But the first thing that I needed was great people. So I started with a very good team. I can tell you, I've been a good student of all startups that have started in India. Coming out straight from the blocks, we are the best team ever,
Yeah.
just in terms of profiles.
Yeah, I believe that. I think even Avnish from Matrix had actually come out on record and said that you guys started off with the best team that he had ever seen.
Yeah, by a distance. I mean, the first 15 guys who started, um, out of them, we still have 12. They are all CXOs, all worth at least 100 crores.
Oh, wow.
And the 3 who've left are, 2 of them are founders, okay? And one is a founder of a $3 billion company.
Right.
And the third guy actually went off to the US and he started something out there as well, which is, I think that startup is worth 300 million.
I'm lost for words. That's all at this
Yeah,
point.
I'm telling you. I mean, if you execute, you have to execute to a high bar, right? And I was 35. I was on the right side of 30. I knew
Right.
enough people, so that helped.
How much did your journey as a VC investor actually help with what you started to build?
Actually, it seems like it helped, but frankly, it did not help at all. Because most of the VCs who knew me, okay, so while I was a VC, I was a very different kind of a VC because I could never speak the language of a VC, right? I did not know the jargon. I used to speak in very dhanda kind of language and all that because that was my upbringing, and hence I was a very bad VC. So most of the guys who were good VCs did not like me because I was a bad VC, and the bad VCs anyways don't matter. So when I actually went in, I actually even found it tough to get a single foot in the door. It's very tough to believe that you are a VC and you want to raise money from VCs, but you found it very tough to believe. So I actually put my other co-founders ahead of me, and that's how we got meetings. So it was damn tough.
Right. But what's
I
the
also tell you why. I think I was one of the first 2 or 3 guys who actually moved on from being a VC to an entrepreneur. A couple of them are in Gurgaon, me included, but it was damn tough even for him.
but is it only you who says that you were a bad VC, or you just believe it? Others don't.
No, I'll tell you why I was a bad VC. Because frankly, as a VC, what do you need to do? As a VC, the playbook is very simple. You invest in 10, you succeed in max 2. If you're great, you succeed in 3. If you are, and the others need to fail. You
Right.
need to have failures and speak about it, right? But the 2 or 3 that succeed, they should be literally in double digit returns, double digit multiple returns, let's say 10 to 30x.
Right.
The problem with me was that I was very dhanda like. So what happened is, out of the 10 that I invested, I actually invested in exact 10. 7 succeeded, meaning 7 didn't lose money. In 3, we lost money. But the 7 that succeeded gave us returns between 2 to 5x. Okay, and hence I was not a great VC. They told me I was a great business guy, I was a great operator, but not a great VC.
But
Because
those-
that didn't fit the mold.
But those were also times of non-techie, hardcore
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of
I
businesses.
was
Right?
absolutely non-technical.
I've pulled some receipts to demonstrate that you were not as bad an investor as you say you were.
Okay.
We have a recording here from a friend of Ashish's. He was the founder of Cloud9 Hospitals, and Ashish had invested in him. So he has during my conversation with Rohit, who is the founder of Cloud9, he said a few words about Ashish. Here goes.
He's just, I don't mind calling it out in public, he's mad. He's mad. In a good way, mad. So it was Ashish who, built that relatable equation. I had the opportunity of about 4 term sheets then. Chose Matrix over everybody else because Ashish was that guy who was a complete enabler.
So that's Rohit. So you had actually convinced a founder that
This
you
is the
guys
only
were-
company where I made more than 5x.
Fair enough.
hence good words. Yeah.
So, we'll come to the question of while we're talking about venture capital and investing, right? There's a lot of folks here who probably are not investing in startups or even think of startup investing as gambling,
Right.
right? How many people here invest in startups? Just show me the raise. Very few. How many people think that startup investing is gambling? Okay, so that I was I was going to preface this question, but So tell us, right? Is startup investing a game of skill or a game of chance?
Game of chance,
Completely.
out and out. People who play it are always lured into the belief that it's a game of skill. But I can tell you, because I've invested in more than 30, 35, it's purely a game of chance.
So why do it then? Why?
Because people love gambling, right? See, there are many vices in the world, right? So you can, I mean, you can chew tobacco, you can drink a lot, you can gamble as well. I mean, it's a vice at the end of the day. People need to have a vice. It's a very clean vice. At the end of the day, you know, if I'm chewing tobacco, people will tell me I'm mad because I'll have cancer one day, right? But if you are a startup guy or investing in a startup guy or an angel investor, people will say, "Ah, okay, great vice."
Fair enough. Who do you think should then invest in startup and who shouldn't invest in startups?
If you ask me, people who've run a startup or been in a startup, meaning that they've experienced it hands-on about what is a startup, typically should be the ones investing in startups. And others who do not have that experience, if they really want to do it, they should just double up and make friends who have that profile and just follow them. I think that's the only way in which I have seen a trend of people making money. I have seen ex-founders actually being good startup investors, and that could be my microcosm. And people who've just kind of, you know, like all the guys who take tips from the Mumbai brokers, you know, not all of them make money, but the Surat guys do. That's a trend, right? So similarly, if you follow that profile of a person, you'll make money.
Fair enough. I'm going to extend this question a little bit because we're supposed to be speaking about the state of the startup ecosystem, and I'm going to say something from my very personal experience of running a fund. Uh, there's, of course, everybody's read about the funding winter and how companies are struggling to raise capital and go on.
It's not so. It's not so.
It's not so
No.
from a funding perspective.
Funding perspective, one, it is back. Second, I don't think the early startup ecosystem was that badly hit. And three, I think the companies that are doing well, particularly from a profitability standpoint, have always had money,
That's true.
particularly debt.
That's true. I think, but what was happening was that if you look at the normal econ 101 of things, right, when liquidity is easily available,
The valuations soar.
yeah, the valuations go up. There's more FOMO. So even if you are burning money to acquire a customer, and it's there in the Excel that you will not be profitable, somehow those senses have started to prevail.
That's right.
Right. But what's also happened from a fund manager perspective is that the LPs, limited partners who invest into our funds, have started asking fund managers this very pointed question at this point. And it's not just with us; it's with a lot of fund managers, the best ones included, which is that you commit money to us for 8 to 10 odd years, and after that, after I take all the risk for a decade, firstly I don't have any liquidity. You as a fund manager take 20%. I pay another 20-25% in capital gains tax. So बचा पुचा तो कुछ भी नहीं हुआ ना, इससे अच्छा तो मैं इंडेक्स में डाल देता हूँ. Right? So my question here is that what do you think is the future of for venture capital funds? Number one, and number two, there's been an exodus of capital which has gone out from these funds into more liquid assets. Do you think that trend is here to stay?
No, see, frankly, these are cycles, right? If you look at it, I have been exposed to the startup ecosystem now for close to 15 odd years. Fundamentally, the way I think about it is that there are these 3 to 4 years of boom, and then there are these winters or busts for about 1 to 2 years. We are in the middle of a bust, and hence your questions are like this. Right? Had you been in 2021, the questions were very different because then we were in the fag end of the boom. I think the cycles change. Nothing is going to, all cycles of money. It's just that the cycles are much shorter out here. So if you take real estate, for example, real estate typically goes through 10 years of boom, and then you have 2 years of bust, right? But the reality is that the booms are not that appreciable enough as compared to what you would see in a startup boom and bust cycle. Startup boom and bust cycles are one, shorter, and two, much more higher peaks and much more deeper troughs. That's the way to think about it. So I don't think any of this is going to go away. What you are saying is very true right now as we speak. And we are probably in the middle of that cycle wherein everything is getting corrected, particularly from a startup standpoint. But there are very early signs to say that, that the curve is going upward as well. Like, for example, if you look at it, you look at the state of the Indian public markets, they're just going up. If you look at the lineup of IPOs right after the general elections, that's going up. If you look at number of entrepreneurs who are or to be entrepreneurs who've kind of put in their papers and readying themselves to start up, that number is significantly going up compared to what it was, let's say, 6 months back. So there are early, I would say, leading indicators to that effect. So that the cycle is going to turn back. Give it a year, maybe a year and a half from now.
Absolutely. I think something that you touched upon was that also that India has the reason that the public markets are doing reasonably well is because there's a lot of macro tailwinds that India has going for itself today, right? If you have to give a piece of advice to anybody in this room about basically leveraging that macro opportunity to make big money, not today, not tomorrow, but in the next 5 to 10 years, what would you suggest?
Uh, with respect to public markets or in general?
Just in general.
I think with respect to public markets first, just exit. Because you would have made money in the last, whatever, a quarter, 2 quarters if you've been there. Even if you've been in mutual funds, I'm pretty sure you're seeing annualized gains of anywhere between 25 to 30% at the bare minimum, or else you are with the wrong advisor, or you are a poor investor yourself. So on that, you should exit. I think if you look at the India story, right, the real force that is playing out, and in a big way, is this entire thing around China plus one, or Southeast Asia plus one, or for that matter, some of the Middle East plus one, or some of even North Africa plus one. A lot of that is playing out in India. If you ask me what is one big macro wave that is going to sweep this country going ahead, is this big trend of saying that we are going to become if not the second, if not the first, but the second choice of certain country. Like, for example, if you take garments, we are becoming Vietnam plus one. Nobody wants to be in Vietnam because Vietnam wants to go up the value chain. Sri Lanka has gone away, so it's basically Bangladesh left. The next can be India, right? If you're playing with something in plastic, then it's China plus one. If you're playing with something in metals, then it's again China plus one. So in my opinion, India is at a current state where geopolitically and socio-politically, we are at that stage where we will become the manufacturing destination of choice. And hence, to figure out, depending on what you know and what ecosystems you belong to, if you can bet on that one big strategy, in my opinion, that asset class is just going to fly away. Now, how do you play that? Supposing you are playing on a China plus one, you could be a manufacturer yourself. You could be an investor into some kind of a manufacturing enterprise or manufacturing set of institutions. You could also build a career in a manufacturing enterprises that kind of substitutes for China. You can play it in very many ways, but in my opinion, that's the big one. That, for example, if you look at what we are betting out in our company today, the extra dollars that we are running, the 100 million that you mentioned, 60-70% of that is actually going into betting into this. And as you know, one of my skills was to smell money.
Right.
And this is like really, it's stinking.
So, so how do you manage, for example, all of these opportunities that you are seeing outside, right? And then basically house them as in-house kind of experiments and then run them, right? Does that distract you? Does that make you focused? How do you make that happen for yourself, given how much you manage?
See, at any point in time, the number of experiments or business units that we try to incubate, this is within the company, is somewhere between the 10 to 15 number, and that's a large number. Because this is what is in a 0 to 1 scale, or less than 1 year old in terms of when having started up. There are in my opinion, there are about 5 rules to actually make that happen. The first thing that you should have is that you should have people who are not core to actually running your core business operations, running these units. Okay? There are ways to solve it, and hence the second rule is that those people cannot be from outside your company. So you cannot get a new guy to run a new business. Then there are two news. You have to make one old. So you can get an old guy from within the company to run a new business, or you can get a old business guy, meaning that guy has been exposed to this kind of a business but is new to the company. Obviously, that doesn't exist because that fundamentally that thing is new, right? So the second thing is that the person who's actually running these experiments has to be a graduate from your own ecosystem. The third thing is that you have to be patient. Okay? But that patient has to be around a timeline. In my opinion, that timeline is always a quarter post product launch or post service launch. The fourth is you have to be ruthless, because fundamentally if you're starting something up, you'll get emotionally wedded to the idea of it continuing, and hence you have to be ruthless. After, like, we set a quarter for ourselves. After that we just stop. I mean, I go to the point of saying that, hey, if there are people who have to be let go, I am happy to actually pay them out of my own pocket rather than from the company's coffers in case there is an emotional attachment involved. So the fourth, you have to be like really, really ruthless. And fifth, and in my opinion that's the most, is that the ideas of new innovation should not come from you. Because frankly, most of my time is mostly spent in offices or in customer meetings. I generally don't spend as much time on the ground or on the street as I used to, let's say, 5 years back or 10 years back or 15 years back. The people who are on the street are the ones who have real knowledge. You just have to make sure that you channelize them, you understand them, you infer them, and then you create the opportunities. And that's when the ideas will really fly. So in my opinion, we use these 5 to the fullest. We used to have a much longer laundry list of what these incubations would be, but I think we've filtered down to these 5.
That's very, very interesting to hear. I also want to kind of touch upon a very related topic here, right? Because when you do the kind of experiments that you do, there will be a large number of failures which will also come out of this.
Yeah, 80%
right?
fail.
But India में इतना ज़्यादा there is stigma of failure as well, right? कभी-कभी your maybe a star player takes the failure personally. It's a failure at an objective, but हमारी tendency है, to often take it कि यार I'm a failure. Do you face that, or have you managed to kind of coach your team out of that? How does that?
See, I don't fail, right? Those 10 guys fail.
Right.
So I think, so your question is, how do we manage that failure?
That there can be accomplished guys, a guy who's good, but he takes the failure very personally.
Right.
But the guy is good. He can go somewhere else, or he can be attached to a different part of a business and still succeed.
Right.
But people tend to have that spotlight effect.
See, okay, so I think the notion that you will hear everywhere is that you should, one notion that you'll hear everywhere is that you should be celebrating failures. That's bullshit. ऐसा नहीं होता. Failure के बाद आप celebrate कर ही नहीं सकते. जो वो बोलता है वो झूठ बोल रहा है. So now to deal with failure, there are only 3 possible ways. One is a person retreats into a shell. Okay, if he's retreating into a shell, he has no place in your company. You should be ruthless enough to let him go, at least for the benefit of him, if not for yourself, right? तो उसको let go करो. दूसरा बंदा क्या होता है, वो एकदम बाउंस बैक करना चाहता है. ही इज द गाय हु सेज दैट I've learned failures are the stepping stone to success. I've learned from my mistakes and I'm going to correct it the next time around. That guy you need to back, because this guy will potentially run away and become an entrepreneur somewhere else. So you should, and I have a method of how to make it work. We'll come back to that in case you're interested. But that guy you need to really hold back. And that guy will always slip away from you because he knows that he had a failure at your place. Right? And then there is a third guy. Then the third guy is basically who will say that, hey, you know what? I had one failure. Now let me meander. The slack guy is down. The bounce back is top. And he says that I'll meander. That guy also you have to throw away. Frankly, what is happening is, because we are changing as a society, that bounce back guy used to be like 5%. Probably today it's about 10%. Those guys are very rare. So you have to change the person. In 10% of the time only will the guy actually fit into your scheme of things the next time around. And most of the time he may run away. So you are left with a 95% attrition rate post-failure, which is fine.
So I'll come back to that part, right? About retaining the guy who's failed, but you want to keep him around. How do you go about doing that?
So when we graduate people, I'm giving you a real answer, right?
Yeah.
So in my opinion, every entrepreneur needs to have some kind of very basic skills. One is sales, two is ability to think very practically and stuff like that, right? Very basic skills. It's a toolkit. Let's say आपको 10 चीजें जाननी है तभी आप entrepreneur बनाओगे. तो हम क्या करते हैं? In a very Machiavellian way, what we do is when we give an internal graduate to run these experiments, we make sure that he's not picked up all those 10 skills. He's probably 6 on 10, 7 on 10. तो फेल कर जाएगा, हम बोलेंगे बाकी तो सीख के जा.
Right.
So internally, when we create an entrepreneur or a guy who's actually going to run an experiment within the company, we make sure that he's not fully an entrepreneur yet. Like he may not be exposed to capital raising. He may not be exposed to team building. He may not be exposed to technology building, which my good friend Vivek is very good at, right? So he may not be exposed to it, and hence he does not have appreciation of it. So हम वो 2-3 हमेशा छुपा के अपने पास रखते हैं ताकि जब वो भागे तो हम बोलें ये तो सीख के चला जाएगा यार. इतना तूने मतलब in the hard colloquial way अब तूने 3 साल मराई, ये 3 तो लेके जा. Right? So yeah.
How do you think about this? You in terms of यार ये बंदा I have to keep him around क्योंकि नहीं तो ये कहीं और जाके he's going to create wealth. So do you think about it from that perspective that I would rather have him create
Now
wealth
I
for us?
do. Now I do. Because when we started, we were a team of 6 co-founders. My 6th co-founder, if you remember those 15 guys that we spoke about in the beginning. So the 6th co-founder was a guy by the name Srinath Ramakrishnan. He was a classic entrepreneur, right? He was the 6th guy in the company. He was classic entrepreneur, could do everything. I lost him after 1.5 years. He created a company called Zwork, right? So then I realized that one should not have all the skills within a company, right? They should have some, but not have others. And during the journey in the company, they should not learn everything because then you risk attrition.
Ashish, you're laughing about this, and you're a very, very optimistic person.
Right.
But as a host of during this chat, right, I want to figure out that where was that chink in the armor? Were there times that you felt that your optimism was in your journey of building OfBusiness, that your optimism was really, really tested to the core? Would love to hear.
73 times, remember? You only put it out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I thought it was 50 something.
Yeah, 50-ish.
So
No, very many times. I'll be honest with you. I think in the first 3 years or so, till we actually stumbled on debt as the real source of capital which can be used for building an enterprise, we are highly leveraged today. We haven't raised too much capital, right? And we understood how to be the darlings of debt. Okay. I think we saw more dark days than colored ones.
what do you think that most Indians don't understand about leverage and debt that they should?
I think most people, there is a class of, I would say, old world Indians who actually think that debt is bad. कि ऋण लूंगा तो काम नहीं करूंगा, यार मेरे सर पे कफन चढ़ा दो लेकिन किसी का पैसा मत लो, ब्याज नहीं दूंगा. There's a huge communities who think so. The bigger problem is that anybody who's been an MBA here would know that leverage actually creates value because it doesn't take your company away. The corporate finance का पहला learning होता है कि leverage लो, as long as you can pay that, you're creating value for yourself because the company is not slipping away from you because the only other option is to actually take nivesh or equity, right? So I think first of all to understand that debt is an instrument that can actually be taken and made into a real, a USP for your success is something that most people miss out. You look at the biggest companies of India today, whether it is Reliance, whether it is Adani, whether it is Bajaj, they're all debt funded. They've not raised too much of equity. They've raised equity only when they get into hard times of not being able to pay the debt because they've raised too much debt. Right. So first is this awareness that it creates a lot of value, that it can be a game changer. Not many of us actually think like that because we've grown through the 70s and the 80s and the 60s when actually taking debt used to be considered a social taboo. Right? That's the first. Second of all, you have to understand that to pay debt, you need cash flows. You can't be operating with losses or heavy capital investments and all that. The only way you can service a debt is by actually giving money back. You cannot give promises back. In equity, you can give promises back. You can make a great sales story. You can actually go ahead and, say sorry and people will tell you, hey, this guy's genuine. In debt, you tell sorry you get bumped from behind. So the reality is you have to make your model such that it has to have cash flows to pay. And not many people think like that. Right? So those are two very basic things. There are other things, obviously, but
This very good point on cash flows, right? Because I think it was one of your podcasts with Avnish or somebody that I was seeing, where Avnish was saying that revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash flow is reality. Right?
Yeah.
So I think you guys are literally embodying his his suggestions at this point.
no, I would have responded him to saying that ki the other two don't matter. Cash flow is vanity, sanity, and reality.
So आशीष आप debt raising करते हो, आप equity raise करते हो, you run experiments within your company. How do you balance all of this?
I don't
With-
balance.
You don't?
It's very tough to balance. See, frankly, if you're trying to balance, you won't end up balancing. I just do what is the need of the hour. Whatever stares up. I mean, see, when you are in business, how do you really operate? Because if you have 20 things to do, you just attend to the most urgent or the most important. Most important is what you have at the back of your head. Most urgent is what you see in the front of your face.
Right.
That's how I balance. I'm very poor in balancing, actually.
I'll reframe my question. Balancing in terms of your professional responsibilities with your personal ones. And I'll put this here, right? So we had a lot of to and fro in trying to set up this conversation almost 2 months back. And every now and then I'd be like, Ashish, Sunday ko kar lo na. And you're like, sorry, Sunday is daughter time.
Yeah, Sunday,
So-
second half is daughter time.
Okay. See, so you're that planned out. So you do balance.
No, because she forces me to balance. So my daughter is 7. She's made it a point that after 4 p.m. on Sundays, I have to be at home taking her out somewhere. So yeah.
So did that happen like by by default, or did you kind of design that into your process?
No, I didn't. Actually, see what used to happen is first, I mean, people who are entrepreneurs here will realize first 2-3 years you just can't balance. I mean, if you're balancing, you're reducing your chances of success anyways, right?
Correct.
So my daughter is exactly the same age as her business. So she was born 4 days before we started the company. Okay, so she was growing up, and so was the company. So the good part of our building the company with my daughter was that when the daughter really had her senses that Papa and Mama are not around. We have 2 companies. My wife leads one, I lead the other one. So by the time she was 3, I think some of those hard years had gone away.
Okay.
So yeah, I was lucky that way.
You were also lucky. Speaking of your wife Ruchi, you were also very lucky that way.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
So you both now run a unicorn, right? The nicest, the thing which put a smile to my face when I was doing research for this, right, was this which I found on Money Control. It says "Hum do, hamare do," right? Which is because both Ashish and his wife Ruchi have a unicorn each, right? So yes, please give it up for that.
Yeah, and 2 independent companies. Yes.
2 independent companies. So I'm going to ask you a very pointed question here again. What is the one thing that you love about working with your wife, and one thing which is a big challenge working with your spouse?
I think the one thing that I love is the fact that we are completely complementary. Whatever I'm good at, she is not so great at, and the reverse is also true. Whatever she is great at, I'm not so good at. So exactly complementary. And because we kind of swam through the same kind of academic and professional ecosystems, we had a good understanding of the fact that we were complementary very, very early into our lives. So one is that. And I think the fact that that stands against is the fact that see, one unicorn is tough to manage, especially if built in a short period of time. 2, it's a lot complex. So work tends to percolate to home. There is hardly a line between personal and professional lives. Everything kind of becomes professional. So to the extent that when my daughter was 5, she knew a few jargons by herself. I'll tell you the most popular jargon. My sister, my daughter's Bua's name is Rosie. Okay, and one of the key things that I always focus on is return on capital employed, which is ROCE. So actually, my daughter calls her Bua, which is my sister, as Rosi Bua. So she's picked up so much jargon. She talks about pat, give me a pat, give me my income for the day. Whatever. If I tell her that, she has to wait for me, she'll ask me for a fees and stuff like that.
She's going to be a better investor than you for sure. This is a very interesting conversation because you have so much of your family which is actually tied into off
Yeah.
business, right? And
Well, that's
you,
the only way you can do it. If your family is not with you, you can't pull it out.
yeah, and you still managed to. It's together, but it still has its own kind of. You said that there are no lines, but it's still balanced, isn't it?
No, see, the way to think about it is that when you want to create something big and fast, what you need to do is you need to increase your chances of success. How do you do that? There are very many things that you need to take care of, okay, which obviously does not add to your business, but is important to do.
Right.
Like, let's say, taking my daughter to extracurricular classes, somebody has to do it. If I have to start thinking about it, then what happens is it eats up into the time that I have to put into business. So to put that structure together, that somebody is taking care of it, and if it can be, let's say, a grandmother or a grandfather, it's much easier that way. To put that entire structure into place is something that one should always do. I think even before Ruchi and I started, we actually took about a year to think about how do we put a family structure together so that we could actually focus our lives, which involved us moving from Bombay to Delhi, which involved me moving my parents who were for the last, I think, 200 years in Cuttack. We uprooted them and got them to Delhi, which meant that we actually timed the kid in such a way that, that she was as old as the business, right? So we actually planned that. And we did not plan what we would do in the business. So I think planning that structure around you so that you could focus your energies on something is critical. It's critical to any pursuit, whether it's an academic pursuit or a professional pursuit or a sports pursuit. The structures around you are the ones that make you successful because it makes you focus and just do away with what is noise for your pursuit.
That is so beautifully put. One of the things that while you were speaking right now, which came to my mind was I'm a big fan of Nawal Ravikant, right, the
Right.
founder of AngelList, and he had said somewhere that no amount of success in the professional realm can make up for failure in the personal life.
Right.
Founders need to remember that,
Right.
And you just embody that all the way through and through. So we'll move on to.
There's no option otherwise. See, frankly, if you don't have a supporting structure, what's going to happen is that you will spend less and less time doing what you are intending to do, and that reduces your chances of success.
Right.
And entrepreneurship, frankly, is about increasing the odds of your success. So the more you increase your odds, the better off you are.
Balance of probability.
Yep.
Right. Now, we're going to move on to the next segment and then we'll go on to some audience questions. To keep this interesting, right, we have a small pop quiz for you.
Sure.
Okay. We're going to start with the first one. The first word that comes to mind when I say money.
More money.
Okay, next. The first word that comes to mind when I say fraud.
Run away from it. The first word, it shouldn't exist.
Okay. Try again.
Fraud. The first word that comes to fraud, the guy should be put in jail.
Okay, fair enough. Next. First word that comes to mind when I say fun.
Work.
Okay. First word that comes to mind when I say personal brand.
That's the last thing that should be on your mind.
Okay. Next.
Like, I don't even apply for any awards. None of our people in the company, we never apply. We apply for company awards,
Right.
but never for individual awards. Personal brand is the worst, according to me. Unless you're a B2C entrepreneur.
Then you need it? Or
You don't need
validation?
it, but it kind of helps you in the beginning years. I think in the later years, it starts hurting any which ways.
While we are on this, right, because people look at those awards for validation. But even if you are a little bit into the ecosystem or, keep your eyes open, most of those awards are kind of traded.
Jury awards, very, biased awards and stuff like that.
Right.
Yes.
But because we are more of a status-driven society, we always use that as an indicator of, validating our this thing. What do you tell your team about those awards and how to kind of not get validation from those things?
No, I think I remember reading a quote from I think Salman Khan sometime in the early 2000s, wherein he said, he's never as smart as this quote. He said that people who actually create commercial success do not win any awards, right? And that has just really stayed with me. I tell people that the only thing that you should care about is money. And if you have time, then care about fame within the organization. And the third is crave for power, but not for fame outside, because that will spoil this equilibrium.
I don't have this over there, but power or money?
Money.
I like
Even
how
they know
he's
the answer.
consistent with his answers, right? Why is that? Money can buy power?
No, power will lead to money anyway.
Okay, fair enough.
So better go for it immediately.
All right, next question. The first word that comes to mind when I say entrepreneurship.
It's very hard. It's damn tough.
Yeah.
It takes a toll on you professionally, personally, emotionally, physically. I mean, I used to be a fairly good-looking young boy about 5 years back.
You're still good looking. Yeah? You have a George
Significantly
Clooney look now.
Oh yeah. Give it to like 5 years of entrepreneurship or 7 years of entrepreneurship, whatever. So it significantly ages you.
But you do it all over again, right?
Oh, any day, any day. I would do it earlier. I think I planned too much. I waited too much. I planned for 2 decades of asset build out. I would probably do it now with half a decade of asset build out. I'd probably do it before 30.
You do that. Okay, and you did that 35.
I started at 35 years.
Fair enough. Next segment. Fill in the blanks. The best startup founder, in my opinion, is.
Nikhil Kamath
Oh, that's a very good answer.
or Nitin Kamath, whoever.
Yeah. Next. The book that left the biggest mark on me as an entrepreneur is.
Is that good, great? I forget the name. I read it very
The
early.
Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
No. What? Good to great. Good to
Good to
great.
Great.
Good to great. Yeah.
All right, next. Dash is my one skill without which I wouldn't have been as successful. I think I know.
Sales.
Yeah, I knew this one. While we are on this topic of sales, right? And a lot of people have written about this. Even Peter Thiel, who was one of the first investors in Facebook, he said that the best, it's usually the sales guys who are the heroes of any company. We
Right.
give them fancy names like
Right.
management consultant and investment banker or CEO.
Right.
But they are the main heart of the business, right? And they have egos, they have ambitions. How do you hire for sales? Because you want to see that hunger, but somewhere there is overconfidence. I want to hear how you go about the process of actually hiring a sales guy.
So first of all, I don't take an experienced sales guy ever. All our sales guys are pretty much freshers or maybe 1 year into their professional journey. So that's number one. Second thing that I look for is deep hunger. You can see it when some people speak, they're like, they would spring out of their seat a little bit, but they wouldn't really jump out. They would talk about not just what their dreams are, but they will couple it with saying that how they will get there, right? So I think hunger and hustle or hunger and hard work combined together is something that you need to look for, and they will give you many signals of if they are not, right? So that's the second thing we look for. Third thing that we look for is communication flair. कि बंदा जो है मतलब थोड़ा सा मतलब मजाकिया हो, थोड़ा सा स्टोरी बना सकता हो, थोड़ा स्ट्रक्चर में बोले 1 2 3. I mean, people can do it in very many ways, but you need to have some kind of a communication flair, right? The fourth thing that I look for right now, after having some years of experience building that, is good general knowledge. According to me, if you are poor in general knowledge, you can't break the ice. You can't engage in small talk, and without that, you can't do sales. So good general knowledge. It could be about anything. It could be about entrepreneurship. It could be about the wine being kept there. But you need to have good general knowledge. And the wider your general knowledge, the better it is. The depth doesn't really matter, right? So that's the fourth thing we look for. The fifth thing that I've slowly realized painfully is humility. Because as a sales guy, what happens is you'll get a lot of rejections. Frankly, I've been a sales guy for like close to 15 to 18 years of my life. I can tell you that 90% of what was a lead never became a convert, right? So you have to have the humility. Persistence is a different word. Humility to say that, okay, it happens to everyone. It has happened to me in the past. Life hasn't changed. Let me move on. It happens to the best of them, right? So humility.
I think you just touched upon another very important point here, which is that people are often kind of attaching themselves to just the outcome, right? And that's why we tend to take ourselves too seriously rather than actually attaching yourself to the effort of it all, right? And it is something that you have to have humility to know that sometimes the odds weren't in your favor. It wasn't you, and that is something that I think defines the best of us, right? We move on to the next question. Dash is your path to financial freedom.
Money.
I'm gonna ask for a different answer than this one.
Okay, that is your path. Knowledge.
Okay, fair enough. This is the last one. India will be a dash $1 trillion economy by 2030.
I think they're saying we are probably a 3 trillion economy, and they're saying that we'll get to about 10, is what I remember. The way to think about is I think we will grow at the rate of about 10%, especially with all the geopolitical things about. And if you are growing at the rate of 10%, then in about 8 years you double. Okay, so that
So
makes
won't
it
happen,
6.5.
So it won't be by 10 trillion can't be by 2030 because that will be 14%, right? So
Correct,
that
that's
can't-
14-15%. So
Right.
it'll be about 6.5 trillion.
Okay. Now we're going to open up for questions from the audience. Where's the
The only answer I promise not to give is money. Otherwise, I'm open for questions.
Where's the mic?
Hi, am I audible? I am at the bar.
Right.
Here.
Hey.
Yeah. One question, just on the last segment, you said that the sales guys should have general knowledge but not in depth. And then you said knowledge is the solution for everything.
No,
Don't you
and
think?
knowledge is a solution for financial freedom.
Yeah, so financial freedom. So don't you think deep knowledge will actually lead to financial freedom?
See, the reality is that the reason you shouldn't have too much depth as a sales guy is because as a sales guy, you'll meet very many people, right? And not everybody will have the same kind of taste that they will engage in with you. So having a wider set of tastes, but knowing a little bit about each one of them is more important than going deeper into one because otherwise you decrease the chances of your sale.
All right. Thank you.
So do you mean just to follow up, and I'm helping you here. So when you say like wider knowledge, right? Is it also in terms of so that communication depth is something which is again very important for a sales guy. And if you don't have that broader knowledge, you can't do that small talk. You can't have that breadth of conversation.
Yeah.
Is that the reason?
Yeah. See, there are 3-4 things that any sales guy should know. One which works in India, right? If you're a good sales guy in India, the first thing that you should talk about is sports, particularly cricket. You should have an opinion. You should know a little bit, whether historical or current. Okay. Second thing is Bollywood. Unless you are in southern part of India, then it becomes Collywood, Tollywood, whatever. But some would, right? Because you should have an opinion. Because more often than not, the people typically want to speak in that language. The third thing that you should have an opinion today is politics, right? Because general elections are close by. You should have an opinion whether it is going to be Modi again. Is Yogi Adityanath going to replace him? I mean, you should have an opinion. Whether you're right, wrong, who cares, right? The fourth thing, in my opinion, today is also having an opinion around startups, crashing, public markets, just business knowledge. Very basic. But these 4 things, I think, in general, are helpful.
Interesting. Next, anybody?
Last question. We're running out of time.
Hearing you, I could make out that you're a blend of the old Marwadi business.
No, I'm
acumen.
a Brahmin by birth.
You are?
I'm a Brahmin by birth.
No, business. The
Okay.
Marwadi maxims and coupling of the modern techniques of running business. Do you think that is the mantra for success in India?
Well, see, reality is that if you are unique, you will stand out. Right? Now, given that I'm in the startup ecosystem, being a Marwadi here is a differentiator. And hence, I would say I am much more Marwadi, and that helps me become unique. And hence, a lot of stuff that I say is typically not spoken. A lot of stuff that we practice is typically not practiced. And hence, it probably attracts attention from all kinds of sources, whether it's employees, whether it's investors, whether it's lenders, and stuff like that. If you're in the Marwadi ecosystem and you leave me, I'll probably be a misfit.
You're a blend of the best of both the worlds that I can see.
Oh, well, to be very honest with you, I learned about technology only about 7 years back when we started. One of the key reasons why I stopped being a VC is because my previous employer, who was a VC, Matrix Partners said that, hey, you know what? If you have to grow within the system of Matrix Partners, you have to learn technology. I said, F it. If I have to learn technology, I'd rather do it for myself than for you. That's how I left actually, finally. So it sounds so because I'm a good sales guy, right? A good sales guy typically appears convincing, but I'm not.
Great.
Right. I think, do you have time for another question?
Last question, 20 minutes. Yep.
I want to ask you, you said you have to learn technology within a VC fund. What is that? Because I'm in the VC space.
I did not learn
So
technology.
what was asked of for you to learn within as a technology as an investor?
Well, to be very honest with you, first of all, you have to learn the jargon, and second of all, you have to be conversant in it, and third of all, you have to make sense of it. So I was very poor in any kind of jargons, and I could not make sense out of the jargons that I was using for my own daily knowledge any which ways, right? So yeah, it would have taken a long time.
Great. I have, Ashish, I have one final question to close today's very insightful conversation. You're the person who's, achieved most of his moonshots at this point.
No, not at all. I'm just
Really?
starting off.
So that was my next question, the closing question. What is that next big thing from Ashish Mohapatra that we should all watch out for?
So I'll tell you, I have a very simple goal about this. I think the way I think about this is add a zero to whatever you're doing, right? Maybe at a larger scale, okay, you could do it in more number of years. So if you are today 100 million of PAT, the goal is to make it a billion. If it's a billion of PAT, you make it 10 billion. So it's very simple. Just add a zero. India invented the zero any which ways, right? Now, put a time frame that may be unthinkable. Like, for example, if you say today that to move from 100 million of PAT to $1 billion of PAT, we want to do it in 3 years. It sounds unbelievable, but yeah, that's our aim, right? So it's very basic. Just add a zero, whether it's to your bank balance, whether it's to your revenue number, whether it's to your PAT number, whether it's to your net worth in total. Just add a zero. A zero is very, very powerful.
Fair enough. I'm still going to hold your feet to the fire. What is that target? Is it $1 billion in PAT? Because then I'll have you here again when you actually achieve that number.
I would say I would say first would be $200 million of free cash flow. Because PAT also is misleading because your PAT could be locked into,
Correct.
assets that you have built out. It should be real cash flow. A business is really good if it throws out cash flow. Reliance throws out a lot of cash flow,
Correct.
right? Amazon throws out a lot of cash flow. Facebook throws out a lot of cash flow. So yeah.
Actually, I'm sorry. I know that I said that the previous question would be the last. This is genuinely the last. Will the common people have the Janta here? Will they have a chance to invest in OfBusiness as a public entity in the near future?
Frankly, we have a lot of HNIs who are invested in us. Just looking at you, I can tell you that a lot of you guys are HNIs. So in about a year.
In about a year?
Yeah, we are readying ourselves. I think we'll be ready after 6 to 7 months. So May is the general elections. We'll be ready by June, and then we'll time the market.
Awesome. We will all be looking forward to that, Ashish. Everybody, please give it up for the man of the hour, Mr. Ashish Mohapatra.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.